Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Winecast. As promised, here's part 2 of the cast on Austrian wine. After laying out the basic wine law framework for Austria in part 1, this part will look at 3 other classifications for quality wine that all have stricter standards than the requirements to produce Qualitätswein. A tiered Prädikat classification very similar to the one used in Germany and primarily for sweet wines, a classification for mostly dry wines that's exclusive to one sub-region in Austria, the Wachau, and a system modeled on the appellation systems of France, Italy, and Spain that foregrounds the region and terroir that the wine comes from, and that's still being rolled out and developed throughout Austria. Let's start with the Prädikat pyramid. The Prädikat system in Austria, as in Germany, classifies wine based on the sugar ripeness of the grapes used to make them, with tiers higher up the pyramid representing higher concentrations of sugar in the grapes at harvest. The system resembles the German period closely, but a few things are different. First, Kabinett, the lowest tier on the German pyramid, is missing from this pyramid, and that's because in Austria, Kabinett is considered part of Qualitätswein. Kabinett does have a higher requirement for sugar ripeness than the rest of the Qualitätswein tier, and unlike other Qualitätsweins and all of the lower tiers, chaptalization, or adding sugar to the fermenting juice to boost alcohol levels, is not permitted for Kabinetts or for any of the Prädikats. Ausbruch originally referred to a style from around the town of Rust in Burgenland that blended botrytis-affected grape must with unaffected must from grapes grown in the same vineyard. This type of wine from this area, called Ruster Ausbruch, is the kind you'll usually find, but Ausbruch also exists as a ripeness level midway between Beerenauslese and Trockenbeerenauslese, and it could theoretically be produced anywhere in Austria, though it's only rarely made outside of Rust. Again, like Germany, Eiswein can be made by letting grapes that are at least at the Beerenauslese level of ripeness remain on the vine until they freeze, and the water precipitates out as ice, thus concentrating the sugar in the grape must. Finally, a wine may be labeled Strohwein or Schilfwein, and that indicates that it was made from grapes that have been dried on straw mats. Though this classification scheme can be used for dry wines as well as sweet wines, at least at the lower ripeness levels, as in Germany, many producers feel that this classification treats quality dry wines as an afterthought, and 2 separate attempts have been made to develop alternate classification schemes that better serve drier wines. The first of these was developed in 1983 by a trade association of producers local to the Wachau Valley in Niederösterreich. The organization, the Vinea Wachau, or the Wachau Wein, is not an arm of the Austrian government, so affiliation with their organization is voluntary. But one source that I saw indicated that the organization's 200-plus members represent around 85% of vineyard land in the Wachau. This system sets up production standards for its members that are stricter than those promulgated in Austrian wine law, and has an imaginatively named 3-tier hierarchy for dry wines based on potential alcohol by volume, as well as other factors. Also, chaptalization and back-sweetening are forbidden at any level of this classification. The names of the levels, incidentally, all refer to features of local history and wine culture, with the lower tier, Steinfeder or stone feather, referring to a type of grass that grows in the vineyards. Federspiel, to a device used in falconry and by extension to the sport itself, and Smaragd, or emerald, to a brightly green-colored local lizard. Like I said, imaginative. Though the Wachau system for classifying dry wines is the older alternate system out there, another system, this one promoted by the Austrian government, has been implemented in more wine-growing areas. The system is called Districtus Austriae Controllatus in Latin, or, loosely, Austrian Controlled Appellation Area, and is modeled on the controlled appellation systems of EU countries like France, Italy, and Spain. Any of the 18 subregions of the 4 Weinbaugebiete are eligible to apply for and receive a DAC, and if one is granted, it'll be for a specific variety or varieties with stricter standards of production set for the wine than required by the standard rules of the subregion. Wines that don't meet the standards set for production or that are made from a varietal other than the authorized ones can only receive the geographic indication of the Weinbaugebiet that the subregion is in and not of the subregion itself. In other words, the subregion's name is only available for DAC wines if it has a DAC. An example might make this clearer. Take the Middle Burgenland sub-region of the Weinbaugebiet of Burgenland. It has a DAC approved for the production of Blaufränkisch. If a wine is made from Blaufränkisch grown in this area and it meets the production standards required for the DAC, then it can be labeled Middle Burgenland. And like a Chianti or a Bordeaux or a Rioja, consumers in the know will have an idea of what the wine is made from, even if only the region it comes from is stated on the label. But if the wine is made from a grape other than Blaufränkisch, even if it's grown in that area and it's made to a very high standard, it can only be labeled as coming from Burgenland, since the appellation Middle Burgenland is only available to wines with a DAC. Also, if a wine is made from Blaufränkisch in this region, and it doesn't meet the standards set for the DAC, it can only be designated as a Burgenland and not as a Middle Burgenland wine. Varieties won't be specified on a DAC's wine label, as they aren't under the French, Spanish, or Italian systems, unless a region has DACs for more than one varietal, as is the case occasionally. This system was rolled out in the Weinviertel sub-region of Niederösterreich in 2003, and currently there are 9 DACs in Austria representing appellations for single varietal whites and single varietal reds, and 1 for white blends. The best known of the 9 are the DACs of Weinviertel, Kremstal, and Comptal, all 3 of which have a DAC for Gruner Veltliner, with the last 2 having one as well for Riesling. Any of the 18 PDO subregions can potentially apply for and receive a DAC, but since they'd have to give up their appellation for their other non-DAC wines, it's not certain that all of the other subregions will apply for a DAC, and the Wachau seems to be happy with its own system. Finally, a quick word on a couple of terms that you'll see on DAC wines: Classic and Reserva. These designations refer to differences in style and are a heads-up to consumers about what to expect when buying a particular DAC bottle. Classic represents each producer's basic expression of the wine they make. This style is fruit-driven and relatively light and will have no or almost no detectable oak character. Reserva, by contrast, will be a more powerful and full-bodied expression that is permitted, though not required, to have a detectable oak character. These styles also differ in minimum alcohol levels as determined by the specific rules for each DAC, with classic wines usually requiring a minimum of 12% alcohol by volume to qualify, and Reservas requiring about a percentage point more. Okay, that was a lot of very technical information, and I hope it was helpful, but I'd hate to end a cast like this without giving you some sense of what to look for when buying Austrian wines. So here's a quick and dirty guide to what to be on the lookout for. Niederösterreich is home to 4 DACs, Comptal, Kremstal, Weinviertel, and Triesental, that are all approved for Gruner Veltliner, and most are approved for Riesling. Niederösterreich is also home to the Wachau, and you can't go too wrong with wines from any of these appellations. Little Wien has a DAC, Wiener Gemischter Satz, whose wines must be blends of at least 3 permitted white varieties that are grown in the same vineyard and co-fermented. The wines produced under this DAC are considered some of the best dry white wines in the country. Burgenland has 4 DACs that are approved mostly for red grapes: Eisenberg, Middle Burgenland, Letheberg, and Neusiedlersee. Burgenland is also well known for botrytis-affected dessert wines made from Welsh Riesling from the Neusiedlersee Hügelland subregion that is not a DAC. And finally, Steiermark is becoming known for Sauvignon Blanc, a grape that isn't widely planted in Austria, but is making a name for itself in this southern region. Thanks for joining me for another Winecast. This one, along with part 1, covered a lot of technical material, but I hope it helps you make sense of what your options are when thinking about buying some Austrian bottles. Is this the whole story of Austrian wine? Nope. There's a lot more to tell, but that'll have to wait for a future cast. Meanwhile, if this cast was enjoyable and helpful to you, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a comment, a question, or a request. I'm your host, the Unknown Winecaster, and I'm out. Enjoy the grape, but always enjoy it responsibly.